All right. Hey, everybody. Uh, Thanks for being here with us today. A few minutes into the meeting here. Thanks for your patience. We're here today to talk about how legal can help prepare the business for an economic downturn. Certainly a pertinent topic in this day and age. Uh, I am Dave Leroy. I'm the Senior Director of FP&A here at Link Squares. And I'll let Tim introduce himself as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Perillo. I'm the Chief Legal Officer here at Link Squares.
All right. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about, the reality of an economic downturn. What does this mean for you and your company? What are some actionable steps that you can take in preparing the business to run during an economic downturn, and really how the legal team and obviously I work in finance, so a little bit of the finance team as well can help partner with the business to help run things efficiently and get through these trying times. And then we'll leave a few minutes here for Q&A at the end as well.
And also, feel free to use the chat functionality to ask questions in real time. We do want this to be as valuable as possible for those of you who are attending, and make sure that we're addressing any questions that you may have. So feel free to interrupt us as well, and we will we'll be happy to address any questions that anybody has. So, Dave, maybe you could kick off here and talk a little bit about the macroeconomic outlook and sort of the finance person's view of what businesses are dealing with these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a shock to anybody here that, the economy is a bit unstable right now, and, that could persist for a while, right? Nobody knows when this might end. There's a lot of conflicting data out there. And so, right now is a time where everybody has to be kind of hyper vigilant in making sure that they're operating in the right. I think from a legal and finance perspective, now more than ever, we have to be those strategic business partners to everybody else in the company. We need to be able to make sure that we are communicating, clearly and concisely, and that everybody's rowing in the same direction. And, I think largely legal and finance as well, we kind of see all the different areas of the business, right? So we can help kind of everyone else in the business understand all the different moving parts and how to navigate during these trying times. So there's a lot of things that I think, we can do. You always want to make sure that we're being proactive, helping people see around corners, and really take quick action on items whenever possible. We can also use, I think, this last bullet point on this slide here, right? Looking at data that's available to us to make sure that we help influence the company strategy and operations in the right way, and do it in a factual manner, right? By looking at the data that's available to us, looking at data in our contracts, obviously, to see, what sort of terms are in there, what sort of things we need to look at from a risk mitigation standpoint, so to get revenue in the door and cash in the door quicker, those types of things. And, I think honestly, the teams that can kind of accumulate new knowledge and new data and act on it faster are the teams that are going to win in these challenging economic times. Tim, what would you add to that from the legal perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's absolutely at the forefront, and should be at the forefront of the minds of every legal and finance professional, what's happening from a macroeconomic perspective. And from the legal side, when you think about what really is going to be sort of the first line of defense for you as the economy starts to turn, you're really trying to figure out how your revenue streams are protected and conserved. and that is oftentimes associated with the contracts you have with your customers. And so being sure that you have an understanding of what different types of termination provisions look like, what default provisions look like, what your responsibilities are under your agreements is really, really important. But I think most important is making sure that you're trying to be as proactive as possible. What within your legal environment is something that can impact cash coming into the company or the obligations that you need to perform. And this can even look at how would the company be treating potential reorganization and solvency proceedings of certain customers, and what size customers are you looking at? How are you splitting your time? You have thousands of customers. How are you figuring out which customers to spend the most time on and investigate, right? You're probably going to determine which ones make up the bulk of your revenue.
Yep.
Alternatively, if you have a whole bunch of customers where you don't have any like meaningful outliers in terms of like, all right, 10% of my customers make 90% of my revenue, and you have a much more flat sort of business model as far as revenue from customers, then what I would look at is anomalies in contracts. So I would imagine if you're in a business where your customers are largely paying you approximately the same amount for the same types of services, you're probably going to have some sort of a standard form contract associated with that. So I would look at customers with whom I have a contract that differs in some material or meaningful way from the form contract. So I think it's really just an aspect of like understanding that in challenging economic times, everybody is going to be looking to preserve capital where they can, and understanding what your rights and obligations are vis-a-vis your customer is sort of at the forefront. And then going a little bit beyond that, understanding what the organization is expecting from you as a functional leader, right? Dave and I work closely together and support the business units on a lot of different aspects around the contracts, around procurement and different things like that, around different types of financial planning, and structure, like organizational structuring and things like that. And so making sure that we are actually in lockstep together as we're going and supporting the business units that are coming to us for varied kinds of advice is also really important, and helping to provide the business with some insight as to what we're seeing. Are there any leading indicators that may be indicative of particular problems that we should work with the rest of the business to try to figure out or turn in the right direction? So there's sort of an internal facing and a relationship facing and a communication level aspect of responsibility that you have as a legal and finance professional, and above and beyond just simply understanding the technical nuts and bolts of what's going on.
Yep.
So Dave, you had mentioned this, starting with data and evaluating. You want to give some insight as to how you're looking at the data at LinkSquares, and maybe give some tips and tricks for those listening in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think first and foremost, having access to real-time data or as near real-time as possible, right, is crucial to kind of remaining nimble and informed as to what's actually going on in the business at any given time, right? I think having a clean, reliable, data repository, whether it's a CLM system or a CRM system, et cetera, really helps legal and finance teams be proactive and be those kind of value add strategic members of the company that can help see around corners and help be the business advisor that we all need to be in these interesting times, right? So I would also say, having data just generally allows you to do more with less, right? If you have good, clean, reliable data and are able to quickly analyze what's going on in a streamlined way, then you're operating at max efficiency, and you're able to accomplish things that without that would take hours and hours and require more people on the team and things like that. So just from a pure kind of efficiency standpoint, um, it's good to have this sort of data at your fingertips as well. I think there's all sorts of things that you can do with data from, again, a system like LinkSquares or your CRM. I think you were touching on it a little bit earlier, Tim. Just asking those critical questions of which contracts are not like the others, right? Or looking at customer cohorts to understand, is there a certain customer cohort that we can perhaps be charging more money to, or conversely, is there a cohort that we think is really at risk, and do we need to go back and reevaluate and be more flexible on terms with those customers and things like that. So again, I think uh, having access to data in any way, shape, or form is really the holy grail to allow you to be more efficient, to do more with less, and to really make those kind of strategic decisions that we need to make across the business to be operating as well as we can, and doing more with less.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I try to focus on when I'm looking at different types of data is I try to identify different types of leading indicators. You talk about having a pulse of what's going on in the business, and and especially in your world, looking at cash flow, cash collection, looking at calculation of runway for organizations maybe that are not cash flow positive. Um, that are venture backed or otherwise. Really a fine tuned understanding of how just easy example is, if you're the person reviewing the contracts, or your team is reviewing the contracts, and you're seeing fewer contracts for review come in, then that would probably be something that you'd want to talk to people about pretty quickly. Also, maybe a little bit less obvious than that, if you're seeing the timeline from the beginning of a conversation to actually signing and collecting that cash, if you're seeing that begin to extend, that may tell you that you're going to need to think a little bit differently about how you're managing your cash flow going forward. So looking at those types of metrics, and also being very critical about how your staff is operating, right? In periods of economic downturn, like it or not, everybody needs to take a look inward and say, do I as a company have the right staff in place? Do I have a staff that maybe is operating at the level that I need them to operate, or maybe they are not operating at, certain of the staff members are not? And how do we take proactive steps to remediate and get more productivity out of maybe some members of the team that are struggling a little bit, and really like driving focus in that area to get the best out of your people. And so being able to have regular data that you track with regard to that is all very, very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's never a fun conversation in some regard, but I think a certain aspect here too is to use this as an opportunity as well, or at least this is how I operate, right? Is when things get tough, that's when you can flex your creative muscles as well, right? When you have to do more with less, and find new ways to get things done that you're not used to, that can actually be an exciting thing in some regard, just in terms of, sometimes in finance and legal, you don't always get to be the most creative people in the company, but this is kind of a forcing mechanism to figure out new ways to do things, and kind of approaching it with that mindset I've found is also helpful as well. So
Yeah, exactly. And with the increased visibility, I mean, particularly Dave, in your world of FP&A and that side of finance, probably more so than maybe your traditional sort of accounting and bookkeeping side.
Mhm.
That side of it just gives you a lot of cross-functional visibility, which is great, and which is something that a lot of legal teams, assuming they have the resources, also have. We have the luxury of working with I think most business units across an organization. And so oftentimes there are a lot of efficiencies that can be found simply by streamlining communication and identifying maybe areas where there's two people doing very similar things or things that are aimed at sort of the same goal that might not be working together. So being able to identify and find some of those things is also a ton of fun. And you're right, David. It's a great opportunity to be a little bit more creative and step out of our specific disciplines.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
speaking of which, being strategic and flexible and supporting the business is critical as well. Dave, you wanna just talk a little bit about how you and your FP&A team has really sought to reach out to the business and really develop that deep business partnership.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, right? Finance and legal, we're internal service providers, right? Our customers are largely the rest of the organization, right? And I think it's incumbent upon us always, but especially in when the economy is down, to really be that proactive partner, right? And ensure that we are over communicating and making sure that everybody's in the loop as to what's going on across the business, and so that there's nothing slips through the cracks, or people aren't running in different directions. So I think first and foremost, again, it's really just having that focus on trying to be out in front of everything, being proactive in the conversations with all of your different business partners. We always make it a point to try to check in with our stakeholders at least once a month, but really, it's an everyday kind of thing, at least, via Slack or quick Zoom check-ins, or stopping somebody in the hallway, to just, keep a pulse on what's going on. Is there anything that is keeping people up at night that we can help with? Is there any data that we can help analyze for them? Are there areas that we need to cut costs, that maybe FP&A or legal have identified, where we can again get creative and find ways to still get to yes and get things done, but maybe in a more roundabout way, or addition by subtraction. You want to do this, you got to maybe trade it off for that, and doing that type of analysis. So I think, again, these, when the going gets tough, flexibility is really key, right? And I think about it even from just a customer contract negotiation standpoint as well, right? Are there things that we can do to still uh, win the business or get a deal done with a vendor that helps us still achieve our objectives of getting a good price, or getting cash at the door? But are there things we can trade, right? That are beneficial to both parties. If we're trying to negotiate for something, are there kind of non-cash things that we can do and be flexible? Hey, we'll do a customer reference call, or a customer webinar for you, right? Or whatever it may be, and really just, again, maintaining that flexibility to keep the business running, keep things moving along smoothly, but again, being a bit more creative to get things done when the path forward is a little less clear than it has been in the past. What would you add to that, Tim?
I would say, yeah, obviously echo a lot of what you said there, David. Being flexible and really going the extra mile and being proactive, I think is really important in challenging times. For the attorneys that are viewing right now, one of the things that I would look at is try to figure out creative ways to structure deals, understanding that, you know, maybe your organization is not in a particularly challenging cash flow situation at the moment, but maybe you understand that certain of your customers are deeply concerned about that. And so figure out different ways that you can structure deals to actually help that customer get to yes, right? Like, how can we, you know, maybe if we're used to doing quarterly payments, maybe we do monthly payments. You know, and if we're used to doing payment upfront, maybe you do payment in arrears, or even just, you know, changing certain of the deliverables, right? Timing on deliverables as well. Being flexible in terms of providing different types of rights associated with things like restructuring. You know, you can go in too hard on a deal with someone who may end up doing a restructuring and ultimately restructure into a very successful business. If you are a little too draconian in what you're trying to negotiate in the context of that, oftentimes you can lose a really good deal. And even coming out on the other side of a restructuring, you may be able to take a hit to some of the revenue, right? Maybe you're only collecting 40% or 30%, but if you're doing a major contract that's like 15 million a year, that's still a meaningful amount of money, right?
Right.
And so when you start getting into sort of law of large numbers, and the importance of those particular customers to your business, you know, you really need to be able to be flexible and be deliberate with the flexibility, right? And that's partnering with finance, right? We had a $15 million a year customer, and there were legitimate risks that we would be only taking 30% at some point during that, say, 10-year term, something like that. Like, you better believe that Dave and I are having a conversation about that, what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
really working together and being proactive and trying to find creative solutions and really embrace that partnership where you feel like you need to, or it might be beneficial for the long-term health of the business to do so. That's really kind of the way that I would look at it. Is, you know, obviously do the best you can to serve your internal stakeholders and support them so that they could go and continue to build a great business, and you could continue to help them build a great business. But then also be empathetic toward the plight of your customers, I guess. Is
Yeah,
sort of the
exactly.
next
I mean,
part of it.
we're all in this together, right? I mean, everybody feels an economic downturn, you know, your company and your customers and your vendors and everything like that. So yeah, maintaining that flexibility and that balance is critical, I think. You know, I think a lot of customer loyalty, right, is earned or lost in down markets, and being willing to work with external parties to get to a good spot is crucial. And you know, we all know kind of retaining existing customers is uh, a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and more beneficial in the long run, right? Than going out and trying to get new ones to maybe fill the void. So yeah, I think focusing on your existing kind of customer and vendor base as well, and working with them in a flexible manner is key.
Absolutely. And kind of as a corollary to that, make sure you got the right technology,
Yeah.
right? That's absolutely critical. You gotta make sure that technology, particularly in the legal space, you know, in finance, you've got a lot of different bells and whistles out there in terms of types of programs that you can use. Obviously, you know, you've got a couple of very popular large ones that can help with a lot of the operation of the finance team. But on the legal side, I think it's just as important for the legal teams to start to take the step in the right direction. Use technology to your advantage. Try to gain efficiencies as much as you can, and let the technology get the data for you. Right. That's a big part of this, is make data driven decisions when you can't very clearly and readily see, you know, the right decision through the macroeconomic, you know, turmoil. as the case may be. So making sure you're investing in what's right for you, and a lot of what that means is making sure that you're evaluating technology with an idea of solving a problem that you've clearly defined, right?
Right.
It's not just enough to take technology and say, oh, I bought this software, and maybe that software doesn't solve the real root of the problem, or maybe it doesn't create an actual efficiency within your business. So I would be very, very critical and spend a lot of time in scoping out what efficiencies you're trying to gain and what problems maybe you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So I think maybe with that, because we're running up on time here. I know we've got a couple of questions. Dave, you wanna see if we could get through a couple of these before we have to jump?
Sure. Sure. Let me just pop over here to the questions real quick and see what we've got. So one question that came up is, when thinking about 2023, what are some ways we can ensure, we're appropriately planning the future of our business. So a fairly high level question, I guess, but I think it hits on a lot of the tenets we covered here, right? Which is, you want to be proactive and collaborative. You want to talk to people about, what is the business really trying to get accomplished, right? What are our goals for the next 12 months, and how are we going to get there? And really, again, use as much data as you can to build a factual understanding of your current business position, how you're going to get from A to B, and again, how you're going to do that in the most efficient way, right? Can you leverage technology to do things better, faster, cheaper, instead of throwing people in seats to try and solve the problem? Something you just said, Tim, as well. Like, I think you have to be very prescriptive and deliberate about the problems you're trying to solve, and make sure you're not just trying to throw a solution to a problem that doesn't even really exist yet, right? Really focus in on the key pain points at the moment. So yeah, those are some of the things I have. I'm not sure what else you might add to that, Tim.
Yeah, I would say, just kind of reiterating a good bit of what we've said already. Make sure that you're doing everything you can to support the business, and really drive turnaround times, and manage your work well as a legal function. Like, be organized, be strong in the way that you're delivering your advice, be decisive, be circumspect, and be open to new and unique suggestions on how to navigate this that you get from your business counterparts. And then again, yeah, with the technology, I say it all the time. It's not enough to buy technology; you got to buy into the technology. And so, as soon as you've identified technology that works, or that's going to solve a problem, or purports to solve a problem for you, you have to actually work with the technology. And I use the analogy of Salesforce. Like, imagine your salesperson in a Salesforce shop says, I'm going to go ahead and update Salesforce at the end of the month. Like, it's probably not going to produce a very good result. And it's the same thing with legal tech. If you're going to buy legal tech, you got to buy into it, meaning you have to actually change the way that your team operates in some way, shape, or form. You have to actually use the software. Dave, imagine if people on a finance team didn't do what they needed to do in putting the information into NetSuite. How would that work for your team? Probably not very well, right?
Nope.
Yeah. And so I think making sure that if you are going to make investments in this way, you're making the smart investments, and you're not only fiscally investing, but as an organization, as a legal organization, you're investing your team into that tech.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually interesting that you bring that up, because one of the other questions we have here is what would you say to someone who is evaluating CLM solutions, but they're worried about getting their team to actually use it, right? So kind of like you were just saying, buying into the software. This person says their team is very accustomed to, like, the processes they currently have in place, but they might not be efficient. So how do you, I guess, how do you get the team to buy in and use a CLM system or really any other software?
So that's a great question, and a couple of different like a couple of different conferences that I've been at over the last quarter that talked specifically about this issue. And there are some people who literally will have it be a part of their performance review. Just basically say, like, if you're not using this software, because you can tell with a CLM, right?
Right.
If people are not using it, the CLM is just kind of a mess. You're seeing a bunch of contracts all over the place in email. You're trying to chase them down. Your data is garbage, unreliable, incomplete. You see it, and you can see usage on a per person basis as well. And so making it very clear to people that they need to use this, and this is actually a part of your job, is really important. And like literally to the point where at least a few general counsels that I've spoken with said, if someone's not doing what they need to do with regard to our legal tech, whether that's our litigators doing different different things with some of the bill tracking software, or whether that's our commercial attorneys doing stuff with our CLM, when it comes time for bonus, be like, listen, like you would have gotten an above expectations or an excellent rating had you just used the technology, because your legal work is great, but your organization, your buy-in to operating the way that this department is to operate is just not there. And so now I'm going to bring your rating down to maybe it needs improvement, or even just meets expectations. And instead of getting 100% of your bonus, you're only getting 70% of your bonus. Sorry, it is what it is. Like you have to make it as essential of a part of the job as any other aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think it's important generally for lawyers to understand that, like, broadly too. It's not enough to just be good at the legal work. You have to do more than that. And I think the Salesforce analogy is a great analogy. You could be the best salesperson in the world, and once you get someone on the phone, or once you're in a chat communication, or whatever way that you're using to communicate with your potential customers, maybe it's live, right? However it may be, you'd be the best salesperson in the world, but if that person is not keeping records in Salesforce, and you're a Salesforce shop with 200 account executives, that person's not going to be around very long.
Yeah.
Right. It's an essential part of the job, and that's where legal teams have to move to. It's not enough to just be a good lawyer and operate in-house these days. You have to buy into the technology. You have to have an aspect of project management. You have to make sure that you have a good good desk side manner, so they say, and you're building relationships across the business. It's just essential.
Yep, totally agree. And I think it looks like the last question we have here is, what type of data is most important, I guess, for teams to be looking at as they are evaluating the economic environment and their own businesses. I certainly have some thoughts, but I don't know if you want to go first, Tim, or.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. From my perspective, I think the obvious one is, particularly with contracts, is the volume of contracts. How many contracts is your business bringing in? Let's say you have a close rate of 50% from people who are asking for the contract versus people who actually sign and become customers, right? Something like that. If you're seeing a decrease in that volume, that's a problem. If you're seeing a decrease in that conversion rate, that's a big problem. If you're seeing an elongation in the sales cycle in combination with either of those two, that's probably an even bigger problem. If you're seeing people come in and maybe they're buying, but they're buying less, that's something, Dave, I'm sure you'll touch on.
Yeah.
So anything that would very clearly tend to indicate problematic revenue implications, then you want to be attuned to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think you hit on a lot of the ones that I have. I always like to also just look at some other things that might be leading indicators such as, once a contract is kind of in a red line state, right? Like how long is it taking to get through that? And if that's elongating, are there certain issues under the hood that the prospective customer base is really focusing in on that's causing this friction and elongation there, right? Some other things I look at, obviously, data within the contracts is just things like discount rates or special payment terms or these other things that are going to be meaningfully impactful to the cash flows and the bottom line of our business overall, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of data that for a long time has gone unused that we're able to look at now across legal and finance to help be the advisors to the company that we need. So I don't think I see any other questions here. So if that's the case, I think we can probably draw this to a close. This has been a great conversation, Tim. I appreciate all your insights, and hopefully people on the line here got some value out of this as well. And yeah, anything
Great.
else to close it out?
Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. As always, good to chat. Love kicking these things around. It's a lot of fun. So I really appreciate it. And for those who joined, thank you so much. Really hope that you got something out of it. Please feel free to reach out to us. More than happy to set up any follow-up conversations. And yeah, and I hope you all have a great rest of the holiday season and a happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks. Bye.